I'm TJ, and we have some slides here for you today. Was trying to dial in what I wanted to cover here, so we'll get to some things. Usually I'm going to do my presentations a little bit inspired by Jerry Garcia, so you never get the same song twice with him, kind of like me, you never get the same presentation twice. So basically I'm presenting my bioalchemy system with biological alchemy and how it relates to sound healing. And I have a practical practice that we can do together for the sound toning. And I'll get into some slides here. I'm not going to go through all of it and why we do things, but I'm going to basically explain a little bit the meaning behind it and the purpose and the function. And then, of course, to experience it is the main thing. I have a Shruti box. We were kind of talking about this just before. I think it's important, or there's a function of generating sound in the same time and space. And that's why I like to do it live with the Shruti box. And when we all tone together, like magic happens with it. I ordered this thing, it didn't get to me in time. Mine's kind of big, a little bit too big for a carry-on, so I ordered a mini one, and they just told me that they shipped it today, so. You never know. Just in time. So, with that being said, I do have a recording that I did in my grid, in the pyramid, at my place in the country, on my birthday, at the exact time I was born. So we'll use that for the frequencies to go, and we'll get into it first. That generally takes about 15 minutes, so we'll try and do that at the end. So if we want to start now by everyone just taking a moment to ground and center, just taking a deep breath, remembering how important air is for all of us. At least we think it is so far. We met some breatharian ladies, but nobody that never breathes, so until somebody proves that that's not happening, we'll make that important. So take a breath, breathe in that divinity, just centering yourself, getting in your body, connecting to the earth and that divine feminine energy, that groundedness, and connecting with the sky and the stars and the sun. Perfect. And then these two polarizing energies of the divine masculine and feminine, we're going to center in our hearts, in ourselves, because we're all embodiments of that. And when we're centered in our heart and feeling our hearts, things tend to work better. And we work better together. So, greetings everybody. Thanks for showing up and being you. And we'll go through some slides here. Here's the medicine wheel that we build. This was one of them. Another little geometry that we have here. So here, I call this an intercourse, because I think it's funny. For personal and spiritual development, holistic health enhancement, spiritual hygiene, justice transformation, I call this because that's also my Mayan cosmology, and my form of vibrational medicine. So what I say, application of this is the intercourse to unfuck yourself. And why do we do this? Well, my opinion, the most important thing to do in life is to figure out who and what you are. And the big question is, how do we do that? So we can creatively and proactively facilitate life growth and authentic self-expression. And that means finding out who we are, what elements that we're made out of. And, I think that's what makes life easier. Everyone, I think, in a nutshell, wants the same thing. That's to feel good, feel accepted, and express yourself clearly. And there seems like much of things that's presented to us in life take us away from that. So how do we get back into that? And basically this is what yoga is. And early on when I was presenting this like 20 years ago, no one even knew what yoga is. They think it's a series of stretches and everything, but it's a whole philosophy and way of life of just learning how to know yourself and how to integrate into yourself and to be yourself so you can be more of you. And my opinion is that human potential is so divine, we're barely scratching the surface of that. And the more we can get into our bodies, the more miracles happen, the more we can be proactive and constructive rather than everybody's just trying to get by these days. Not everybody, but many people. And that puts us in a different state of being. So for a while, I had a superfoods company, which people were trying to figure out what this has to do with it. And basically what I found out is with brain patterns and doing therapy, if people were deficient in anything, whether that's those self-expression or whatever you're looking for in life, being whole or knowing who you are, but getting into materials and food and nutrition, if you are deficient in your nutrition or your minerals, your brain works differently. It's subconsciously telling you that you're deficient and that you're going to see your brothers and sisters walking upon this earth as competition for food, competition for survival, and that type of thing. When the body is abundant in what you need and your needs are satisfied, you have a different mindset and different parts of your brain are working then. Then you're going to see the people that are walking around to you like they are your brother and your sisters, and you're going to work creatively and more in community to share and to make cool things and, to be happy and have fun. So I think I have that in a slide somewhere. It's fundamental, right? So to know yourself is the great work of yoga, nature of divine union, the divine light and the divine dark. And that gets into a whole thing too that we won't get into those slides, right? But the whole thing that darkness is bad when it's our divine creative potential and that the light is good. And really a lot of times it's just light that's stagnant is what people call darkness or shadow. And, so I think it's important that we come to terms with terms and we know what we're talking about. Super important. So, yeah, we'll get to the next one here. So communing with our life essentials, the elementals, and what are those things? And in our biological alchemy system, it's dealing with the transformation between energy and matter. And, what matters is, what you're focusing on. And the life essentials, basically, I break down into the elements. And the elements, we all know about the 5. This system here I base on a 13, and I don't know if all my slides are that, but we'll get into that, why we're using that and how we resonate with that. But pretty much it's identifying the essential parts of ourselves, and then when you can fortify that and use that energy as a tool, it's more proactive and you can take care of your stuff. That's one of these things that I learned with an outhouse. And I think this is a metaphor for life, is you take care of your own shit. Because we've come into a society where no one really has to be accountable for their own shit, and we're constantly projecting it onto other people, and that comes down into our sanitation systems, where they're just taking it, and no one really knows. And my daughters kind of had one of them had an issue with this, and it's like, do you even know what happens? To your stuff, no one really does. So anyways, this system with the bioalchemy, it's based on chakras, and it has to do with taking care of your own shit, because once you know the element that's making up the different flavors of reality, and you can pretty much break these systems down into different scales that you want. I chose this one. We'll get into why I did that. But if you can go in and fortify each level that you're getting energy from, so you're getting pure energy, it's going to make things happen a little bit easier and better for you, and you're going to feel better. So eliminate interference, the interferences. So what blocks these elements from expressing through yourself and from building your body in a harmonic way? Usually it comes down to fear. Deal with that. Master the fundamentals. There you go. Fun, duh. So mentally, I call it biological, because there's a logic to it with the conscious mind. A lot of these things that happen, this is partially too one of the aspects that I like about the BioCoherence, because of the feedback analysis. It's bringing that out of the conscious mind. And a lot of times you can work in different modalities with medicine, but if you're not conscious of the problem that you're solving and bringing a solution to it, it often reoccurs from the subconscious mind. So there's a problem, it's important to know what you're dealing with, and that's why I bring the logical thing into it. And then the next thing is it's sacred, coherence, constructive and destructive, shareable waves aligning with your intention. I mean, we do a lot of things. Yeah.
Can you define those two words?
Wait.
Ancestors of fear? What's that?
Answers. Interference. Actually, that should be an E. I just broke the word down phonetically.
What does it mean?
What, an interference is an inner fear that you have, a fear that's stopping, that's interfering with you being you and everything else. That should be an E. I think spell check just did it. So that's just that one word spelled differently.
And duhi, what's that?
Duh. Fun. Duh. It's mental. Fun, duh.
Am I going,
duh? Well, I mean, well, you know, too, in doing this kind of thing for so long, you know, I found people listen better when they're having fun. And I had this great awakening at rave parties in the 90s, because I was going to postdoctorate seminars and then a rave party afterwards and saw the similarities to that. And I would try and talk these postdoctorate, the healing philosophies with people during the day, or at a, you know, when people are like, oh, I'm in school, I'm not supposed to be having fun, I'm trying to learn, you know. So going from like these doctors to these people that were partying, it's like one of these groups was much more receptive and able to be creative and happier, and the other group was doing maybe more functional things, but they weren't very happy and they weren't very much fun. So I saw a dichotomy in that when you bring these two things together. What if learning was a party? People would be more open to that. That actually, with you know, my old partner and I, we used to throw these equinox and solstice parties where we would integrate the ceremony and the teaching part into these things, and people were much more receptive. And they would learn something, and they would come back from these parties all the time and be like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this thing that we've been talking about like all year and this and that. So that just comes into receptivity, that when it's fun, people are more receptive. You know, you try teaching a kid when they're angry, they're not learning anything. Or try teaching them when they're not, you know, trying to be there. That's why I really like what we just saw with this app. You make it fun for people, and then all of a sudden these concepts that people aren't open to, it starts to integrate. The seed gets planted. You know, so maybe next time I'll make a slide with gardening and planting seeds when the farmer's happy or something too, but there we go. So is it sacred? And that comes into meaning, you know, and it's fun how meaning is important, literally, right? But then it's funny how when you're mean is like angry. So the dichotomy just in that word and how we're talking, you know, gets kind of crazy. So coming back to the point here is like, what are you communicating and expressing, and what has meaning? And is what you're doing aligning with your intentions? Because a lot of times, especially in therapy sessions, people talk about what they're doing and how they're spending their time. And oftentimes it's super contrary to what their intention is, you know. And there's some things that we all have to do, you know, like buy gas. You know, I don't think anyone really selling gas or the gas companies really have anything to do with many of our intentions or our morals, but we still got to do it. For the most part, you do have choices in a lot of things, and this is just indicating the more that you can get into yourself and get into the essential elements that make up your body and create health and functioning, the better things go, the happier you are, the easier healing is. You know, there's like a moral obligation to express yourself in a way, And part of this is if people don't even know who themselves are, if people don't even know they have a soul, or we can't agree that we have a soul, how do you feed your soul? How do you keep the energy clean? How do you make sure you're, satisfying it? So these are all like big questions with words that we're putting in here. So is your alignment, is it in alignment with your intentions, morals? That's one thing. I tell my clients that as a practice, and granted, like not everybody has the freedom to do everything that they want and only support those things. Because, what is the real currency of the universe? What you currently see, your currency, energy, it's your attention. What you are paying attention to grows. And there's a lot of things that we've been not paying attention to, including ourselves. So basically, this comes down to, paying attention to that which you think is sacred. So that's this sign. Then I break down this word. Sacred and scared are very similar. Being scared creates scarring. So basically, what we're bringing with these elements in these systems is a way to break down what's feeding us and how to sanitize it just by bringing in these energies through our body and applying it to the universe. So here we have some art. Here we have the chakras. And here's how they're defined in 13.
How many do you have?
13 on the body. See where I have these slides here. Everything is energy. So this is where we started with energy. What is energy in consciousness? And misalignment, so looking to align things. Here we'll get into some slides here that just show, we're in the right place for this, but just how the geometry is reflected upon the universe throughout nature. Here we have the universe, the womb, that's a NASA picture, and then we have like the leaves and the roots and the river systems. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here on these things, but this is just showing like, why is shape important? Why is sacred geometry important? So these are fun ones. This is what I love, like the lightning, the electrical energy of like a lightning storm and how that reflects the neurology of our nerves and our nervous system. And then getting into this with the planets. And there we go. So basically, this is when we get into the breakdown of these elements, because it's the same energy that's creating everything. And when we can have, we have unlimited access to these energies as well, and these elements of nature. The thing is like there's a lot of things in a system of control that's distracting you from connecting with it. And the other thing is that all these energies are free. When you look at it, even though that's one of these things when we're trying to self-regulate, look what's happening right now with the water, but that should be, and that is an essential. We all need water. We talked about how we're bags of water walking around, and look what's happening with our water systems, how it's controlled, how we're piping in water to all the house so you have access to this water, but what kind of water is it and why is it that way? So this is one of these things that, to address. Earth, another element. That's the minerals in the food we eat. Look at the organic system. That's partly why I created the Superfoods company for a while too, is to give people access to the essential nutrients that they need to build their bodies in the mineral system. How come we have this system that's organic and we have to pay extra for food that doesn't have poison on it? That should be the the baseline of food, you know, and that was our philosophy there with supercharged foods. It's like, tell me what's in my food, not what's not in my food that shouldn't be there anyways. So that's our earth elements, our physical bodies. Fire is another thing. We've taken away our fire from having the community fire circles. There's a flicker rate and pixels that are super important that can't be replicated that happens with fire when you have live fire, what they would say the spirit of fire there, and that's super important. And nowadays, where is the fire element in our society? It's in our screens, in our phones. So not to be a hypocrite, because we're using fire right now for you guys to see these pictures that I created through the pixels, but there's a far different flicker rate that happens and an awareness when you're staring at a sun or a flame compared to a screen. So the more that you acclimate to these screens and these flicker rates that are coming, that's taking the fire element and the power that you have, your inherent power of your communion with the fire, and hijacking that, so to speak. The air, I mean, that's self-explanatory. My belief is that the pollen count in the air and the elements that were in the air is a lot different now than it was, you know, I would say decades ago, but I'm talking hundreds and thousands of years, that when you start studying theories like breatharianism or whatever else, when you inhale air, it's not just oxygen. All those elements are in there in trace amounts, and you're absorbing that through the lungs. When the plants and the flora was like thriving here, there was a higher pollen count in the air, and we were able to build more of our cells and use the minerals for physiological process through breathing it in. And that's been, you know, adjusted to the air for whatever reasons that is. You know, I always used to say too, if we're all addicted to oxygen, why are we cutting down trees? Because they produce oxygen. But that affects how we're eating, because then we're not getting these minerals from the air that we're breathing in, and we need to eat more food, but then our food is limited on what we can digest. So one thing I like to say, that we are what we eat, you know, everyone knows that, but we're really what we eat eats. And that comes back down into like what's in your food. So here where we're at, the same energy centers that create nature, create your mind, body, and spirit. Then here's a little plasma ball that I got from Georgia here by a guy that passed. So that's fun. Getting into what is energy. So, and consciousness. So basically, consciousness is our tool, and it directs, really it's our essence. You know, our soul essence is this consciousness and its awareness, and that comes back down into like the currency of energy. What we're paying attention to grows, and the whole point of that is maybe we should be paying attention to these essential elements, bringing them into our body and see what happens, because I think it's a lot simpler than it's made out to be. And by simply resonating with these energies, calling in these elemental energies, even if it's not in the physical, because you can call in, you have the fire element within your body. You don't necessarily need to be looking at a fire and to see it. But sometimes you need to remind yourself and get to know that fire inside your body by looking at it outside of yourself. So that's why this practice works with sound and everything. So we'll see that. Same thing with the water. We all know there's water inside our body. So connecting with that water element and that essence to clear our emotional fields and everything else can be super important. Here I got a bunch of different scales here, just giving us some perspective of energy and dimensions. We'll just blow through those quick. All right. So basically going through these different systems and how to relate to these energy. When I first started early on, I was looking at these systems and looking at, well, what is that interface between energy and matter, right? Because to simplify what energy is, you know, we all know that we have thoughts. right? Where is the energy of our thoughts, and where do those exist? Has anyone ever proven that thoughts exist? Like if we want to be scientists about that. You know, but we all know that thoughts exist because we think, right? But has anyone ever seen one? Anybody? You know, same thing with emotional energy, right? Well, because people are like, well, this energy stuff, just getting into like the woo-woo, you know, and that's usually what I break it down to. It's like, well, where are your emotions at? And where are those? We can feel that we have emotions because we feel it because we're experiencing it. So we believe that they're real. But has anyone ever seen one? Has anyone ever proven that those exist either? No. It's kind of like the Wi-Fi signal, you know, when people are like, what's that?
BioCoherence.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're getting into that. That's why this is all so beautiful. So these are all different layers of our being that are unseen, but they're just as important as the ones that we don't see. But the whole point of this is like sometimes you got to take that emphasis off of the things that are around us and being shoved down our throats that we see everywhere. But remember, some of these things that aren't seen are maybe more important, you know, with the spiritual world and everything. And that gets back into the soul aspect, where I think that's mostly what politics is about, is distracting people away from their souls so other people can try and steal those or control it or whatever. And if you can't even agree that people have souls, like going back in, you know, you're not going to try and grow it, right? You don't need that. Don't worry about it, right? So the sacred measurement. So basically, back in college, I went for biology and chemistry, and I got a biomedical science degree and a chemistry minor. And you know, I was in college and quickly learned that it was all bullshit. Part of it is my second year in college, or maybe it was my first year. I had a political science teacher who was from Orange County, California. We became friends, and we used to hang out outside of class, and he would tell me all the political science things that he wasn't allowed to say in class. He would get all excited, and we'd have a smoke after class, and I'm like, whoa. Yeah, I mean, I think back then it was like the Iraq wars or whatever, you know, and he'd have to say what was on the news in class or whatever. And then he's like, well, really, there's a resource here and we want it. So we have to like make a war or a problem with the politics or whatever so we can get our army and go over there and take what we want. But the people need to believe it's about something else. So that really gave me a scope of everything else. And then getting into healthcare and the medical system, I was trying to study life in college, and I found that they weren't really talking about it at all. So I got into these chakras, and I'm like, whoa, well, what's the deepest level that we can go at that's affecting the body? And that's the interface between our energy system and our physical body are the chakras. These are essences, these are energies that feed our neurological and our organ systems that then manifest the body. So I was like, that's pretty important. Let's start looking into that. And not a lot of different systems spoke of those, but you know, I started studying. I actually did my senior, what do they call it? Like your seminar caps or whatever. You have to do your independent research on something. I did it on chakras, and they didn't have one professor that actually knew what a chakra was in the whole university. So they gave me to the new guy that heard the word before. So that was interesting. But anyways, I called my paper Universal Principles, and that's what this is based on. So these are, when I was trying to break down these systems, I was just looking for the universal principles and all that were true. You know, looking for truth. What is true and what has meaning, and what is true no matter what you do with it. So basically, I broke this system down to hold those, and it fits into all these other systems because it just gets down into these essences. So basically, this is where we get into, let's see, where are we at with time here? All right. So, without taking a big side journey here, this chakra system, so getting into sevens, getting back into sacred geometry and number, right? And coming into here we have a phi theme with our Alphys, which relate to the physical body. I found that 7 wasn't that harmonic of a number. And I'm not like against numbers. I think we need them all. 7 isn't a full octave, because I started bringing these to music, which we look at. Where's my keys one? So when you have an octave of music, what's an octave? And what does octave mean? It means 8. So I found that the keys of the piano into a single octave was disconnecting us from source. In order to make ratio, well, first, when we get into numbers, number is only relative to something else. And that's what a ratio is. So when you have your scales, it's all based off of one central thing that you're breaking that down into. It all relates. It's a relationship, right? So what I thought with all these systems, and whatever you want to call it, I mean, I would call it God. If you want to call it source, creation, you know, the everything, that relates, that's the one thing that relates to everything, and what I call that. So when you get into these musical notes and 7, if you're inside an octave, you're not connecting to the whole thing. You never get in a whole number. So what I did on the keyboard with the 7 chakras is started breaking it down into notes. And really, in order to make an interval or a ratio, you have to come with 1. So if you're just 1 to 7, you're never coming into the wholeness. You never get 1. You're just broken down, and you don't have, like, you know, when we're talking integers and stuff into that. Does everyone follow what I'm trying to say about that?
7 is disharmonious.
Well, it's disharmonious, yeah, and it's kind of it's not whole.
Right.
You're never going to get wholeness. So I'm like, okay, the octave. So there really should be 8 chakras, right? So I was hanging out with Drunvalo, Melchizedek, and in his book, he was talking about how, and we measured this, and my partner at the time was a yoga teacher, and she had kids classes too. So we probably measured at least 50 people, had them do this, right? And you take the tip of your finger to the crease in your wrist, and if you lay this over your body, starting at your crown, you'll approximate the 7 chakras on your body, right? So what Drunvalo said is that if you take your hand and move it this way, which your hand is phi ratio, and you get the width of your palm, and you try that same thing, he was saying there is 12, he wrote.
Right.
I kept measuring 13. So we measured all these kids. Everyone was getting 13. I think where they got it off was the perineum. And if you're a guy, you know, it's harder to measure because there's things in the way. And also, if people are out of body alignment, you know, the approximation is like considering that you don't have like a gut or you're not distorted because you're unhealthy.
Also the feet, you got to go to the feet.
Well, the feet are actually plugs.
So there's a
Yeah,
chakra
the kids
on
are.
the-
There are minor chakras on the soles of your feet. Every joint of your body has a chakra point. So we're just talking about the main chakras that feed your neurology along your spine.
Yeah.
But absolutely, you know, the soles of your feet, the soles of your hands, each digit on there.
That's personal.
Well, when you get above your body, you're in another octave, and that's still relevant, but it's not, you know, it's a hologram. So if you just get 1 octave full, you get all the other ones. It automatically goes. It's scalar or quantum or fractal, correct, right? So we're just looking at this full part of the fractal that are along your spine and the top of your head, and then you get the other ones. But yeah, if you go by hand length like this, you know, you have another one here, another one there, and you can keep going forever, but yeah. So anyways, so I was measuring the 13, right? Because when you would take the 7, this was another thing that was asking people, and people with music backgrounds, no one could ever answer this. They didn't even get what I was saying, but I was saying, why are there missing black keys on a keyboard? And what's the metaphor in that? So I was asking people that for a couple years, you know, because they're half steps. And with the math, it adds up. So musicians were never like figuring out what they were saying. But my thing is on the chakra systems and the blocks, when you add these here as chakras, you know, you have the solar plexus in the heart, and this tends to be a place that we're living right now in the world. Ironically, there's not like a black key there. And then the next half step is between the crown and the frontal chakra. So in measuring these systems, I found that the 13 also hits the Fibonacci and the phi sequence. 7 doesn't, and approximates it, which is why it's also a disharmonic. And then going into other systems where you have the 1, 1, 2 is just the duality. 3, you add the child of the heart into that. And then 5, you get into Dantian and elemental theory. And then the next one's 8, which would really be our chakra system. And then from there, we go to 13, you know, and then 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, so on. So when I was
Did you say the 13th chakra was?
well, on the crown, it goes from base to crown, and then they all fit in between.
One missing because there's a lot of people say there's 12 chakras. So where did you say the extra?
The pubic
Okay, cool. There you go.
on most systems, yeah. So I'll go through them. What's that? Well, so we'll go through them because I don't even start. The other side of this was that Gurdjieff inspired this in me, because why would, my first question on chakras is, why is the base 1? And why does everyone think that? Because we don't start as like a solid chunk of matter or a crystal. You know, we start off as nothing and then build a body from that. So you would think, if anything, the crown would be 1. But then there's no organization from the crown, right, from the inside out. Almost the heart. Yeah.
The first thing that
The navel.
from the when you
Yeah, the heart, but right from the navel, I guess is in short. But yeah, it's, you know. So Gurdjieff inspired that sense of maybe like this isn't a linear thing, and it goes in like a spiral from the inside out rather on an extremity. And that gets into the calendars. I didn't think this was all going to take as long as it is, but the calendar thing is a whole another thing. Because then why is our week called a week? Getting into 7 days of the week. And what I was saying is like, why don't we make our week strong? You know, so in my courses too, we have these, well, I was introduced to this guy, Ian Lungold, who was a mind calendar guy. And this is bringing it back together here. I'm started not following the slides, but I found that the Mayan calendar, this count of galactic tones, follows this chakra system like perfectly. And that's a 13 count, and they actually go 13 by 20. So it was like this auspicious story that I won't get into, but I met up with this guy, and he's like, check this out. And then it blew my mind, and it brought it all together, you know, with this system. But he was saying, what is the biggest conspiracy that exists today? Is what time is it?
The calendar.
The calendar. What day is it? And what time? And we all agree, and nobody questions that. And what is today? Monday? So my question to my students here, and I had everyone like looking at this, and I haven't gotten good answers. So I'm just like speculating that it's a system of control and it doesn't work very well, and it's making us weak because it's a calendar week, you know, where a month is supposed to be a moon. It's supposed to be 28 days, and we can't even get that right. But anyways, today being Monday, we're all agreeing that it's Monday. So why are we, with our intention and our alignment, we're worshiping the moon right now? Why?
full moon.
Well, just because it's Monday. Doesn't matter if it's full or not. Monday is moon day, literally.
Yeah.
Tuesdays is Mars. Wednesday is Mercury. Thursday is Jupiter. Friday is Venus. Saturday is Saturn. Sunday is the sun. So we're going in alignment with this, all agreeing on this calendar, giving power to this and creating like this system. Calendars are the way to conjure consciousness. That's what a calendar does. And in a cycle is actually 360 degrees. How many days are in our calendar?
365.
Well, and a quarter. Because don't worry, the math will check out if we just add a day every 4 years. I mean, who came up with that idea? I can't believe that flies, you know? I mean, even as a kid, like some of these things you just call out and they're like, oh no, shut up kid. Like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make sense. But then when you look at the Mayan, you know, they had a different calendar for different types of consciousness. So there's not one calendar that fits anything unless you're just trying to trap people and control them. So anyways, talking about strengthening our week, you know, maybe, I don't know, I've put this question out, but if anyone can crack the code, why we're bringing in and invoking the energy of these planets and the moon and the sun in this order, because it doesn't fit the constructive cycles. It's not really the destructive cycle of Chinese medicine or the energies or anything else. But, you know, anyways, so the Mayan count in 13s, and they have this thing called galactic tones. And that really resonated. So at first I was trying to just put the tones in with the chakras, and it didn't really fit linear. But then there is this thing, and Drunvalo was talking about this, and I presented this to Drunvalo, and he's like, yeah, I'm in the feminine way these days and don't really do math, and I don't even remember the geometries, but I think you're onto something and you should do this. You know, and he invited us over, you know, and he was like, yeah, I like this stuff, but yeah. He didn't even remember like the geometries really when I was, this was in Canada, you know, in the late zeros, I think, maybe the early zeros, 2005 or anything, but anyways, he was all about the heart and the feminine way after going the masculine way, you know, which I would say one's a fire way, one's a water way, you know, and I'm always looking for that balance in the heart. So where are we at? All right, bringing the spectrum together. And I told him about the measurement, and he's like, yeah, oh, I missed that one. You know, probably because, you know, he was not starting at the bottom correctly. But if you measure these, the perineum at the bottom of the legs is the base. Everyone knows that chakra. Then you have the pubic chakra. I never believed that, oh, sexual energy is just in 2 different chakras for men and women. I thought that was crap, you know, but this is a black key here because the black keys tend to be internal pumps that are moving the energy within your body. The white keys are more expression for your extension into reality as like an interface. And a big thing here too, like what we're doing with our chakra, here I'll get one of these charts up, is that the energy of, this is often misdirected and taught, you know, erroneously, I would say, is that your chakras are not supposed to be bringing energy in from the outside in. They're bringing energy inside out. And the metaphor of a stream is great for this because you have these generators of energy within you that are generating pure energy, right? And you have full access to this inside out. That's like drinking your spring water from the spring. When you get the water where it comes right out of the, you know, it's clean. You know, you're going right to the source. You drink downstream, anyone that walks through that stream, you're drinking that water's been touched by that, you know, or if the cow is pooping in the stream up there, that's what you're doing, you know. So this is like a metaphor for your chakras. When you go inside out and you're self-generating that energy and getting it there, you know, it's going to work better for you. So, I mean, I encourage you guys all to try it for yourself. If you're taking out energy from the outside, that's passed through whatever it is. You know, if you're getting your energy not through your heart inside out and you're taking it outside in, it's going to manipulate you and it's going to adulterate, like whatever, you know, it's going to imprint you differently. So, the base, the pubic, black key, then the sacral chakra, everyone knows that one. Then we come up, width of the hand up, we have the navel. Well, there's a hole there. Go figure. Energy center, black key, that's our first chakra. That's the first way that you are getting energy as a kid. That is your lifeline. And you have that energetic cord there. That is how you were fed in your mother's womb, and you still have that cord. So super important. That's your unity that's coming to everything, and then everything divides out of there. You come up the solar chakra, you know, then you have white key, the heart chakra, and then next you have the thymus, and that is another internal one. That's your ego and your immune system, the metal element, your sense of self. That's like your upper heart, your personal heart. So that's where you get discernment. So that's where you like ice cream or you don't like ice cream. The heart chakra is universal love. You love everybody in your heart. In your thymus, you might not love everybody because that's discernment. Maybe they don't, maybe this concept or person or whatever doesn't represent your moral value or what has meaning to you or what you're trying to self-express. That's where discernment comes in, and you say, I have a boundary here and I'm not going to align with that. Or when someone's telling you something that's morally wrong, your thymus chakra, your ego, the ego is not a bad word too. Like, who would you be without your ego? You would be whoever has an ego, because they're going to inflict theirs onto yours, and then you adapt that. So that's, I think, another thing in the spiritual thing that's like a misconception is everyone's like, get rid of your ego, you don't want that. But that's your art form, that's your boundary, that's how you represent your art. Without an ego, you know, you don't have a personality. Put it that way. But there's also a balance in that too. Like going back into like the sacred geometry concept of number, I don't think there's bad numbers. You know, everything is just what it is, you know, and you got to know what they're for. The ego is your spiritual immune system. Just like your body, if you don't have discernment with your physical nervous system and your immune system, organisms will take you over, you're going to get sick. Same thing happens if you're not expressing yourself, or if you're taking in like other people's garbage, it's going to make you spiritually ill, you know. And all these centers are also represented in other systems too. So I didn't invent any of these either, especially if you get into like Indian stuff, like it's all there. So the thymus. Next is the throat. That's our last key, our ether element that ties them all together when it goes in a circle. Then the chin. This also goes to like the brain stem. I think they call it a Bhajan chakra. There's different names for it in different lineages and stuff. But this is our thought, logic, reason, our left brain. The nose, which is our right brain. And that comes in for our senses of direction, perception. Also the cranial pump at the back of the head. And then the third eye, which is an internal black key. That's the pineal, what everyone knows. Then the next white key here is the frontal chakra. And that's also... they also call this like the soma chakra in different traditions, and it connects you to your higher self, spirit guides, and then the crown, which is also what we all know. So then this all balances out there. So what's the order that this runs in from inside out in a circle? This is where I got into this Holy Grail pattern. And what I did, let's see. And if you guys are familiar with that, this is the way that energy moves. Oh, here. I missed this one. This is how these centers line up and everything. And I have her in my geometry. This is my daughter when she was little. I call her like the chakra angel in this. And it took us a couple takes to get her to sit still to get this picture. But it worked. Come on, you know how hard it was? Again, I couldn't wait a year until she grew a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty close.
I like your wings.
Yeah.
This is crystal, this is called?
That's a selenite. So I started studying these are super important because people think these are magic. And why? And this is like the line here. So I noticed that that goes in. So basically, they have like the Chartres Cathedral ones and everything are more complex. That's like a 13 base and everything. And this has to deal with
the 13 base one.
At the Chartres Cathedral. Like here, so these are on the floor, you know. So basically, what happens is people build these all over the place, and you walk them. I don't even know how people rationalize, but I figured out what it is. It comes down to proprioception and neurology. So basically how you orient yourself in time and space, and it's working like the nose chakra, which is number 8, right? So basically what's happening is that you're walking in right here and following this line. And as you walk here, you're turning different ways with your proprioception, and you're coming around. And what it's doing is it's clearing out your neurology system. So by the time you do this and you get all the way around and into the center, your proprioception and your neurology just went through all your system. And if you have the right intention in your breathing, you just cleared all your circuits. And now you're in the middle and you're like, boom, aha, why am I getting ideas? And it's magic. Oh my gosh, it's because this is in a church or something, or they blame it on something when actually all you're doing is exercising your proprioception and clearing all your circuits. You could do the same thing by breathing and holding mudras or invoking elements and focusing on your chakras. You know, it's just a way to clear like your system. So once you get that blank and it's, you know, it's like, or it's like, you know, I don't know, I guess I want to use a pot reference here, but it's like if you clean your pipe out, you know, and the smoke can go through, or you clean your bong, it's like, oh, that was a better hit. Oh, it must be this weed. No, you just clean the vessel. So that's what these things do. So then I noticed the pattern, and it goes through, and they call this the Holy Grail pattern, because when you write this out in dots, and we'll see this that in biogeometry and stuff like that too. Numbers are, the universe doesn't necessarily understand written numbers, and that's embedded. You need to hit the spots. So when you break this down into dots, it looks like a Grail cup. So it goes 3, 2, 1, 4, 7, 6, 5. And that's the way, if you're going through a 7 chakra system, the way your chakras run. And all I did is add the navel to that in the black keys, because every time there's a turn, there's a black key pump that's moving the energy in a different way. So it goes like fire, water, earth, and then you have your pubic pump that brings it up your spine, checks you at the heart, and then to the crown, 7, 6, 5. And then that made sense because you have energy coming from both ways, and it's just the way that energy moves in that sense. So that's basically how I got the pattern, and then it fit with the galactic tones of the mind calendar. So with that being said, in our time getting to where it's at, we can do a little practical application here. We kind of did this. This is what we're going to go through. So if everyone has that list real quick. Okay, good. That was a joke. We'll talk you through it. So we go through all these centers. We'll start with the Yulf. I have a little recording here that we can, like I said, I like to do this live with the sound box, but I don't have that. So I just have this that I recorded that we can go along if everyone's up for this now. What we're going to do is we'll tone a sound together. And this is the main reason why I got into BioCoherence, because I feel like we could have like BioCoherence frequencies written for each of these things behind everything else that we're doing. And what happens is when we're attaching an element, an aspect of self, and all these concepts holographically to these things and make that sound, it's a carrier wave that comes in. The sound is important, but the important thing is that you're making a sound as a carrier, it brings energy in. So the more that you can embed that, the better. And then when groups of people get together, focusing on the same intention, the same biological essences of sound, resonance happens and something bigger happens. So I think it's pretty important. And then when people, when we have these experiences, you'll feel for yourself and how it feels, and how the space feels, and how it cascades in the environment and everything else. We've talked a little bit about this at lunch here, but like when people are sounding together, whether that's a drum circle or making music, nature tends to adapt and come into resonance with that. We've had these experiences where the blowers are going on in the system, and after you tone to it, it tends to resonate. Like if it's bothering people, you know, and I suggest this with sound healing. If you have a sound that you don't like, try resonating with it and humming to it, and then see if it still bothers you. I mean, it doesn't always work the first time, but eventually, you know, it harmonizes, and then it's like, oh, good, that car's driving by. Oh, it's kind of nice. So, yeah, so let's try this. I don't have a speakers, so we're just going to play it off my phone. And then I have light projections here that are actually made out of crystals. So and I have geometries. So the other thing is each of these geometries match these energy centers. And when you formulate these geometries to have the structure to carry these energies just by looking at them, it affects your body. And I think that's what Dan, you were talking about there. So I just use this system to apply that. But yeah, we'll move on because I could talk another hour on this here. So hopefully everyone can hear this and get onto it. But what I'll do is, well, you know what? Let's just do it without the sound box, and I'll just do it by speak because I think that's better. What I'll do is I'll say what the intention is, the sound, the energy, and what the sound is, and then we just all make the sound together, and we don't even need to do it to scale. So let us start with a yulf. We'll start with a yulf and end with an ohm. And a yulf just has to do with like getting all the sounds in your mouth. So we'll inhale, and then on the exhale, you make the sound. So we'll do this one to bring in the universal life force energy, the yulf, the love unifying energy. So it's kind of like, So then here we'll go 1 is unity, and that's universal life force energy for nourishment and nurturance with our navel chakra. And our sound is And then 2 is the solar chakra, the fire element, the mental body, and our sound is O. Three is the sacral chakra. 3 is action. The water element, the emotional body. Our sound is ooh. Stability, the base chakra, the earth element, the physical body, grounding, and that's our cube. The sound is L. Is empowerment, the pubic chakra, the wood element, creative energy, sexual energy for generation and growth. And the square root of 2, our sound is V. Six, flow, the heart chakra, the air element, the octahedron, the psychic body. Our sound is Ah. Seven, reflection, the metal element, the thymus chakra, the ego, the immune system. Square root of 5, our sound is Heh. Eight, justice, harmonic resonance, the nose chakra, the right brain, our senses of direction, perception. Phi ratio, our sound is Sh. Nine, patience, the crown chakra, consciousness, oneness, divinity. Our sound is E. Ten, manifestation, the frontal chakra, the element of sound, connection to your higher self, spirit guides. Sound is Ning. Resolution, the brow chakra, the third eye, element of light, insight, inner vision, intuition. Our sound is A. The chin chakra, element of thought, logic, reason. 12 is understanding. Our sound is Ascension, the throat chakra, communication, authentic self-expression, and the ether elements. All time and space, here and now, the space between the space that holds the space within the space, everything and nothing. Our sound is I. Now let us tone the sound, Om, centering in the heart, feeling the space of silence. Inhaling, unconditional love. Thanks, everybody. I love you guys. Thanks for being you.